Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here as usual, but it's not Phil sat opposite me today. They might look fairly similar, but I've got Josh Bouk with me today. Like incredibly excited to have Josh here. He is Blend's new US CEO, and if you follow Blend on social or anything like that, you'd have seen the announcement and what that means to us and everybody else involved with Blend in some way, shape or form. I'll let Josh introduce himself shortly. But today's episode is one that I'm really excited to have Josh in for, actually, because what he's going to be able to bring to this podcast, not just this one, but also future episodes as well, is a fresh perspective on marketing generally. And I won't kind of, spoil the intro to your background, but it's a really interesting one that has already taught me lots, actually, just in the short time we've actually spent together. And this episode is all about how to survive your first board meeting as CMO. So for marketing leaders out there that may be entering this scenario, the boardroom, the lion's den, so to speak, how do you get through that? How do you prepare for it? What to expect and how to come out of there successfully? And also to aspiring marketing leaders who want to know what happens in the boardroom and what to expect in the future when they might enter the boardroom as a CMO or whatever role they play at that time. So it's probably like a different topic for this podcast, more kind of executive level, but a really interesting one that I think any marketer actually at any level will find insightful, because it's just that fresh perspective on what truly happens behind the scenes in those conversations we don't always have access to. So yeah, Josh, welcome to Demand Decoded.
I'm thrilled to be here. I've been a fan of the pod for a bit, and it's really exciting to be here. And as we announced yesterday, the opening of our U.S. office and the expansion we're conducting in the U.S., I couldn't be more excited about leading that charge. And so, yeah, thanks for having me on, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, incredibly exciting times at Blend. So, Josh, as I mentioned, it'd probably be good for you to introduce yourself. I don't want to miss any points out, but I'll dig in as and where I can. I've learned a bit about you over the last few weeks.
Been talking to my kids.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. So I've been in tech all my life, all my professional life. Came out of school with a comp sci and math degree, and immediately went into writing code. Was not terribly good at it. Discovered that I had a penchant for human problems and business problems, and gravitated towards those. And so very quickly got into tech company and service company operations, and that led me into growth eventually. And for the last 17 years, I've been an executive leader for growth functions, sales, marketing, M&A, strategic services, for a variety of both private equity held and publicly traded companies, primarily, or I guess all headquartered in the U.S., but many of them global in nature.
One interesting thing for this podcast in particular, I find, is that you haven't come up through the marketing ranks necessarily. Right. Like I would say, although you've ran marketing teams in the past, they've also been sales teams, and you've had the CRO and president role in previous companies, but also are more of an investor as well, like some people might call you. So bringing that perspective to a marketing conversation has its benefits as well.
Yeah, I'm sure benefits and drawbacks, as your audience would suggest. But yeah, I'm not going to tell you the best way to design a campaign. That we have great team members to do that, but I think I do bring a perspective of having been in growth-oriented companies and leading that charge for quite a while now. So happy to get into the conversation. Excited about it.
Yeah, and this one in particular, actually, you've got 17-ish years of boardroom experience as well, being in the boardroom in multiple roles, actually.
Right.
and you've had a lot of experience in terms of what happens in the boardrooms and how you've seen CMOs come in, deliver well, CMOs come in and deliver poorly and not get their point across well and crumble.
And I've been one of those. So
There we go.
So I've held roles that have included chief revenue officer, and when I've been the CRO, I have always required that marketing and sales both report up and be a combined function, and for reasons that we'll talk about, I'm sure, either in this podcast or in the future, because I'm fairly passionate about it. But I've also held the role of president. I've held I've been on the other side of the table. I've been an investor at board meetings, and it's not the lion's den, but there are definitely best practices and better ways to engage with a board, and maybe worse.
Yeah. And we only had this conversation earlier, and I think our audience will also benefit from this. And it's the financial acumen side of marketing that many marketers lack understanding in, and even myself trying to improve in that area can be difficult. And I think having you on this podcast, will just take our listeners as well to the next level to understand what truly matters inside the business.
I hope so.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's dive in. And I think where we typically like to start, and I think is an important place for this podcast, is why this conversation matters so much, in particular for CMOs, because the boardroom can be a tricky place to get your point of view across, and CMOs can make big mistakes in terms of the kind of things that they present and bring to the table. So let's just chat a little bit about why we're even discussing this today.
Okay. So it's not only CMOs that have this challenge, but those of us who are operators in a business, whether you're a CMO, a CRO, a COO, or a CFO for that matter, we spend all of our time in the business. We spend all of our days in the business. We know the business inside and out, hopefully, and we manage teams inside the business. We live and breathe our markets, our customers. All of that depth is what makes us successful at our day jobs. But when we're talking to a board, the average board member is coming in and has spent the last 12 hours studying your deck, maybe reading compliance reports. And the last company that I was with before this, we were a publicly traded bank. Our board members had to read 400 to 900 pages of content prior to a board meeting.
Wow.
Okay, so if you're ingesting that kind of information and that level of information, and you're responsible as a board member, you have fiduciary responsibility to your investor base for the financial and risk profiles of that company. You're spending most of your energy not thinking about the detailed operations of that company. You then get a couple of hours, maybe tops, on a single day of that board meeting with the leadership team. And if I, as a CMO, come in and go deep into the weeds of operational metrics, I mean, I've done it. So you just see people. I actually had one board member fall asleep on me.
No.
True story. It was about I don't know, there were maybe 17 or 18 people in the boardroom. And I looked over, I'm standing in front of everybody, giant screen behind me, and I look over and there's a guy that's asleep. and that's not his fault. That's my fault for not keeping him engaged and involved in the conversation. So yes, I think that this is an important conversation specifically for first time board presenting CMOs to really think through what are the priorities, what is the outcome that they really want.
This podcast is brought to you by Blend. We're a B2B website and demand generation agency. We work with ambitious businesses just like yours to create and execute effective demand generation strategies that drive pipeline for your business. We also recognize that your website is the most important asset you have in marketing. So we specialize in building scalable websites on HubSpot that convert the demand that you've created. If you want to find out more about our services and see real results that we've generated for businesses, visit blendb2b.com. You spoke about the translation, issues in terms of understanding what really matters to the board, and you spoke about marketers and CMOs digging into the operational metrics of that function. Is that like a recurring challenge that you've seen in the past, where actually they just need to read the room, understand the audience, and present the right things?
Well, there's reading the room, but there's also just in the moment, certainly you have to read the room, but there's also a set of things that let's use private equity investors as an example. So if you're a CMO or a head of marketing that is reporting to a CEO or a CRO, but you're getting invited into a board, and the board is made up of institutional investors. Those institutional investors have invested with a specific thesis, and they care about how well that thesis is tracking, and they use very specific metrics to track that. If you come in and you start using disconnected marketing metrics and showing what a great job, you're not there to show what a great job your team's doing driving website traffic, as an example, right? Especially today. But going in, understanding what they care about in a fairly, in some degree of detail, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Is critical to. So yeah, I guess it's still knowing your audience, but it's a whole lot more preparation ahead of time.
Yeah. There's also a big challenge I find in marketing with people in your position, like in the past, where everybody thinks they understand marketing.
Everybody's a marketer.
Everybody's a marketer.
Yeah.
Everybody in that room will have an opinion on marketing and think that their opinion is right and the right way to go about marketing. I think in itself that presents a challenge.
Yeah, I have a friend, Hamp, who's been a CEO. He was my CEO at one of my last companies, and Hamp always said the CTO of the business is the most dangerous guy in the business because nobody in the room can question them, right?
Yeah.
They don't have the technical expertise. The flip side is also true. Every single person in the room thinks they know how to market.
Yep.
And some of them have more experience or less, but you have to know that walking in, that there are a whole bunch of preconceived notions, and you may have to be able to defend yourself and explain why you've come to certain conclusions and what data you've used to do that. And I think that we'll get into that more as we go.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's frame the boardroom then.
Sure.
Because most people listening to this won't have actually been part of a boardroom environment before and even understand what goes on and who's in there.
Okay.
So can we outline that? And
sure. Let's start with the participants. So the board, if it's mid-size PE-owned or VC invested company, the board's pretty much going to be your CEO, possibly your CFO, or in a venture-backed tech company, maybe even the CTO or technical founder. But then it's going to be the representatives of the investor groups that you're working with. Mm-hmm. If you're working with one, you're owned by one particular private equity firm, then you'll have probably a CEO on the board and 2 to 4 private equity board members. If it's on the larger side, very often that'll consist of a couple of folks from the PE firm, a partner and a junior partner maybe, or an associate, and then a couple independent board members that they go and they bring in who have particular expertise in your domain, and are friends of the firm or in some way engaged with the firm or the fund. In addition to that, you may have your attorney there. You may have an outside accounting firm there. And then there may just be consultants that the board decides to bring in who are they call them board observers. And in my experience is in the marketing and the sales side, that's actually quite common, where you'll have go-to-market consultants of some form sitting in on some or all board meetings. And and so I think, when you're going into that as a first-time CMO, know who's going to be there. Ask your CEO, right? Who's going to, who are all the attendees? Do your research. If it's the consultant, so I'll give you an example. It tracks my first or second board meeting. We had Kimberly Casper, who was a marketing consultant, and Ray Villarreal, who had run huge sales teams. And they'd been involved in my hiring process, but they were also brought in as friends of the PE firm to contribute during the board meeting. They were amazing. They were fantastic. Because they were great marketers and sales leaders in their own right. They were able to validate the growth strategies that we were presenting and the directions we were heading. And I was meeting with them outside the boardroom too, so we were able to to align things and to trade ideas. I don't know that the boardroom's where you want to have challenging conversations, at least not in your first one. There are times for that, but so I think preparation with anyone who's not an actual board member, preparation with those people ahead of time to help them understand what you're going to present, and if they have opinions or ideas, getting those on the table first is really helpful.
Is there something in creating those allies within the boardroom as well?
Well, so more broadly speaking, I have always approached boards, and I don't know that I have the science here, but I have always approached presenting to the boards as knowing who the chairman is or chairperson. That might be your CEO, or it might be a member of an investor group, or at a public company, it may be an elected position. And knowing what they care about and making sure I'm directing out of respect, if nothing else, conversation their way. There are also going to be board members who actually do know more about marketing and growth science than others. And if you can figure that out ahead of time, and you can direct more detailed comments to them, you can oftentimes get them nodding their heads and feeling engaged, and you want them to be engaged in that conversation, right? You want them to ask questions because they'll sound like intelligent questions, and you'll be able to ask or give intelligent answers. So I think those are the two groups but I'm specifically not reporting to my CEO or my peer group. I'm there to talk to the board members. I can talk to my CEO any day of the week, right? I can talk to my peers in the executive team anytime, and we should have done lots of prep ahead of time. But in these situations, I'm going to have a very limited amount of time. You should expect, even if you're running sales and marketing together, you should expect your time window for an average board meeting is going to be between 10 and 30 minutes tops.
Yeah.
And if it's just marketing, if you get 10 minutes, you're aces. That's about as good as it gets. So really constructing what you want to present and prepare for is, I think, critical.
What a segue. What a segue into our next part, because I suppose let's, frame it. CMO been invited to their first board meeting. They understand who's there. They've done their research. They understand the chairperson, like you say. There might be a couple of members in there that they're closer with, have a better relationship and understanding of.
Yep.
Now they need to prepare. They need to actually put together the information that the board need to understand for whatever reason it may be, which we can get onto. Some of the reasons that CMOs even, go to the boardroom, because it might be for different reasons, right?
Right.
How do you prepare?
Okay, so it starts with sitting down with your CEO and the rest of your executive team. well ahead of the board meeting, reviewing past decks, reviewing what's been said, understanding what the perspective of the board is, asking lots of questions. If you haven't been in those conversations, you have a right to know who are the participants and what do they care about and what, related to the business, and then what has been their expectation and what's going on in the business. Is the business in an uptick? Is it in a downtick? Is the market constrained? Is pricing getting pressured? Is it like where? What are the macro trends happening in the business, and what do they know, and what maybe don't they know yet that they're going to be surprised with, not by you, but by other members of the team. What's the CEO going to talk to them about? Maybe without you even in the room, right? There's executive session where the CEO may have a conversation with the board before you ever get in there. What are the things that are going to be consuming their mind space
Can I ask
before you walk in?
what those things are? Like, what will the CEO be talking to the board about? And what
it could be a wide range of things. It could be lawsuits that the company's involved in, either on one side or the other. It could be real estate transactions. It could be, it can be just a huge wide range of things that don't involve the operational team. May involve the, it could be operational or executive hiring, right? It could be personnel matters that only the CEO is going to be in there, or the CEO and the CFO maybe. And then there's equity planning and fundraising and all kinds of different things that most operational leaders won't be in the room for all the time anyway. And so it's helpful to at least know the topics and know the CEO may not want to give you all the details, but it's at least helpful to understand what's filling that board member's mind. If my marketing message is coming right after they have a really hard conversation about a sexual harassment lawsuit, like that's not when I want to walk in the room and try to tell them all about what we're doing in marketing. Right? So working with your CEO to plan that and plan the agenda and understand where you fit in the agenda is helpful.
Typically speaking, then, what is the CMO's role within the board meeting? Why are they even there?
Yeah, I think generally boards, especially private equity boards, like to hear from all of the leadership team. They own the company, right? So if they own the company, if I owned the company, I'd want to know the people who I'm trusting to run the company, right? To deliver the results. And so yes, I obviously have to know my CEO, but I want to know all of the executive team. A CEO's maybe most important job, bar anything, is building the team that's going to run the business. The CEO doesn't do it, right? It's the CEO's team that actually runs and leads the business. And so having some exposure to that team and judging whether the CEO is doing a good job recruiting a team that I have trust in and can believe in, identifying where the CEO may have had some conversations with the board about the performance of his team or her team, and understanding where there may be, and maybe wants some help gauging whether there's room for improvement. So that's I think that's the environment you're walking into. Now, I think it's also important to talk about what are the business metrics that the investors and the board actually care about. Because when you walk into that room, you're thinking all about leads and conversion rates and this and that.
Operational things,
But that's not actually what an investment thesis is going to be focused on. When that private equity company wants to go sell the business, eventually any buyer or further investor may get down in the weeds, into those types of weeds. But they're going to be primarily focused on ARR growth, on EBITDA, gross margin, gross retention rate, net retention rate, these things that are used to create company valuation, and free cash flow, like these kinds of things, right? And so if that's the case, and you walk in and you just immediately start plowing into all of your cool marketing metrics, they don't have a context,
Yeah.
right? Like it would be like me going to buy a car and I'm thinking about how fast does it go 0 to 60, and the guy selling it to me gives me all kinds of metrics about the internal rate of combustion of the engine, and like what are you
Yeah,
talking
exactly.
about? Like
Yeah.
it's so I think understanding those metrics. I mean, ARR growth is pretty easy, right? Hopefully you're talking about that already. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That's a very common one, and you can Google that if you've never heard it. Please do if you've never heard about it. Gross margin is pretty well understood. Gross retention rate and net retention rate are two things that I think particularly private equity boards and VCs, care about a lot, and sometimes is misunderstood. So gross retention rate is all of your revenue that you're retaining year over year or period over period, minus anything that you've lost. Net retention rate is the same thing as your gross retention rate, but now you get to add in anything you've upsold. The dynamic there is important, especially for a marketer or somebody who's leading growth, right? Because gross retention rate typically is how well is the business holding on to your customers. But net means I can also upsell. And if you're in marketing, you better be involved in the customer funnel, right? The customer upsell funnel, cross-sell, so that we can measure the outcomes. But that metric, right, in great companies, net NRR, net retention rate, is usually 115 to 120%. That means you're holding on to your existing customer base and customer revenue, and then you're adding. Gross retention rate, is going to be a bit smaller than that because you don't get to add upside. But so anyway, I think having a good feel for those metrics and knowing which ones are most important, and then taking what you care about and tying it to them, allows you to create context for that investor to show what your work does and your team's work does to support their thesis.
Yeah. I suppose there could be a tricky scenario where you don't have access to that level of data, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in this scenario that you're describing in these board meetings, and I think it depends on the maturity of company that you're in as well, whether you have access to them or not. But do you have any advice or words of wisdom for those people that are struggling to get access to those metrics in the first place?
Well, yeah, you've mentioned this to me off camera too. And I've thought
it's a big issue in marketing. It really is.
So I mean, I'm an American, so I'm going to be a little bit brute force. But you got to go get it. Stop whining. Your CEO. This isn't true for someone who's 3 levels down on the marketing stack. But if you're being asked to prepare for a board meeting and your CEO is going to walk you in there, this is my marketing person. You have every right to demand access to data that's going to help you tell the story properly. Yep. And it's not that the business doesn't have it. Even if they don't think they have it, they certainly do have it. We just have to collect it and build it. But the CFO has all the data that you would need to be able to do that. If they're not doing it already, and they should be, the CRO should have sales data and cost of sales data. So I'll give you an example. CAC. I hate CAC.
Okay.
And I hate LTV. And I'll tell you why. In a traditional, I don't know if there's tradition anymore with AI, but in a traditional SaaS company where you are selling widget kind of software, like small ticket software, in lots and lots of times, CAC to LTV makes tons of sense.
Yeah.
But people have taken that and said, oh, it applies to every business.
Yeah.
Well, I was running a company at Trax that very rarely lost a customer. Like, we had customers for 30 years, literally. If I had a customer for that long, my LTV is so high, it would justify a CAC of $4 million a year, or per customer acquisition.
Yeah.
It's nonsense.
It's not feasible.
Right?
Yeah.
But Do you think I got asked, what's your CAC to LTV? I sure did. And I had to explain to them why it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Helping folks understand what metrics really drive shareholder value and enterprise value is really important. And that's why I think conversations in prep with your CEO and your CFO well ahead of time, well ahead of the board, so that you can get it done. A friend of mine in prep, I'm thinking about prep, and a good friend of mine talks about, his name's JP. He talks about if you ask me to present for an hour or an hour and a half, I can be ready in 10 minutes. I've got a topic ready. I'll go, I know what I know. If you ask me to dial it back to same topic, but condense it to 30 minutes, I'm going to need a week to prepare. If you ask me to get that same topic down to 10 minutes, I need 2 months to prepare because I have to be salient. I have to really practice exactly what, you're going to have 10 minutes. So you better be preparing well ahead of time and really practicing with your team exactly what you want to share with those board members.
Yeah, the point around CAC and LTV is really interesting, and also something we were chatting about off camera, because it can have so many definitions as well, right? That are relevant or not relevant to different businesses. Like you say, it tracks. There was no point even trying to look at CAC to improve it, or however you want to measure it.
No, there are other metrics that do make sense, right?
Yeah,
like pipeline efficiency, speed to conversion, all kinds of things that will tell me how well we're operating the business and what channels make more sense or less sense and those kinds of things, right? But yeah, that one in particular, nope, doesn't belong here.
Yeah, in that particular scenario, or because
I would say probably in almost any tech-enabled service business. For the same reasons, right? Tech-enabled service businesses, B2B, enterprise, they don't switch all that often because enterprise switching costs are just too high.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to have customers for lots of years, LTV is and CAC they're just not very useful.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. So you are the CMO now. You've kind of understood the metrics that you need to take to this board meeting. You understand how you might need to structure your point that you're trying to, you understand the metrics and where you are in the agenda and the kind of things that might crop up. How do you actually structure the message that you're trying to get across in that boardroom?
So start with the end in mind. That's what I try to tell myself anyway. What my first board meeting, what do I want my listeners to come away with? If it's the first time, they don't know me well, they may have heard about me in the hiring process, or maybe I'm being raised up from, in a promotion situation, so the CEO's talked about that. But this is my first access point to the board. I want them coming away with 3 things: that they feel that I have demonstrated command of my market, command of my business, in that I understand how our business works and what levers and drivers make a difference in that business specifically, and then command of our metrics. Those 3 things will, if I leave the room and they feel that way, then I know that I have earned their trust to then, when I come back the next time, 3 months later, whenever that is, they will be open to critical feedback I may present them that suggests, hey, I'm observing this, we need to change this, or we have changed this, here's the results. But the first time, I want to come away with those 3 things.
Yeah. What's next?
Okay. So how do I do that? I think about, personally, I've got 2 slides, maybe 1, but I think 2, more.
You got 10 minutes.
I'm going to assume 10 minutes.
Yep.
That's 2 slides.
Yeah.
It's not more than that, because you got to save 2 to 3 minutes for questions.
Yeah.
So 7 minutes tops in presenting, and I've got to be able to stitch together some salient points about about how they view the world, what they care about, connected to what I control. And so I have very limited time, and it has to be, well, we'll get there. So I like to be prepared with metrics of my, like stitching together that story of what metrics I manage
Yep.
and care about, and the performance of those. Examples might be at this stage, pipeline velocity and conversion. That connects directly to ARR and to net revenue retention. Channel performance, like what's converting faster, slower per channel. What's my cost per channel? That's connected to CAC. It's connected to EBITDA.
It's interesting you said, because I would think just on the surface that might be too specific, actually, channels.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you've brought that one up.
It depends on the business.
Yeah.
If the business is primarily a channel sales business, then you want to be able to. I don't mean channels like website versus social versus. I'm not talking about leads.
Yeah.
I'm talking about without getting too deep into attribution. That's a whole nother conversation that we can have someday. And Phil should probably be here for that. But the idea of channels in this case is more channels, business growth channels.
Yeah.
In that case, I think that boards should absolutely care about throughput, investment per channel, because that will help them better understand the market that they're participating in, the key partners, things like that.
Yeah, so do you mean channels more broadly, like partnerships, for example?
Could be partnerships. Yeah. Could be, you might be a reseller. You may be an OEM and you're reselling to a bunch of people, or you may be a reseller and you've got a bunch of OEM products that you're combining together into a solution. All of that is meaningful in a channel discussion. Marketing ROI is important, but we have to be really careful with marketing ROI. As you mentioned, you may not have full control over cost of sales, and just marketing ROI doesn't tell me enough about what that campaign might have cost to actually deliver revenue. It might tell me how much it costs to create pipeline, but if, for example, that pipeline now has to be closed by a direct sales force versus a channel sales force that didn't have that campaign, what I pay to those direct versus channel sales forces has to be weighed in on before I can answer the question, do I want to do more of those campaigns? Right? Do I care about that particular marketing strategy? Well, it seemed good to create pipeline, but then it converted way less in sales, and so it turns out that it's actually not terribly effective. Right?
It's the whole efficiency of the go-to-market engine that needs to be considered.
Obviously, that measurement process connects to EBITDA, connects to cost, CAC, and ARR growth, and so I think continuously, and I can even envision some of the charts I've used, but continuously drawing your listener back to here's how this contributes to the things you care about is can be really helpful. And then I always talk about the devil on your shoulder. The little guy on your shoulder that's constantly whispering in your ear while you're presenting, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? You know more about your business than your listener base does. So don't answer questions before they ask them. That, for me, that was one of the hardest things about getting in the boardroom. I would start going off in tangents because I felt like I'm reading your face and it looks like I'm not connecting. So I better go deeper here. Really make sure I drive home my point. When you just might be tired. You've just gotten out of a
that's just
compliance conversation, or or you're just trying to be polite. And so sticking to the high level, keeping it punchy, keeping it friendly, and not trying to cram too much into that 10 minutes. Finally, and this is a lesson I learned from the CMO at Triumph, Michelle Holmes came in, and one of her first board meetings that she presented at, she finished her little segment. Like she didn't have a big long segment. She had a little segment just like the rest of us, but she had a little segment, and it finished with a visual. I'm not going to tell you exactly what the visual was at a private board meeting, but it was awesome. And it made me realize the one thing marketers do have is they have the ability to excite. And it's not just data. It's not it's not even storytelling and anecdotes. Having something visual, a video, a customer testimonial, something exciting happening at an event, finding a way to bring the board into that, especially in private companies, I think. That's not true. Even public companies, this is true. Getting them to live the brand and feel like this is remember, they own the company. Oh, now I can see it.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And so I'll do that absolutely every single time going forward. Whenever I'm in a boardroom, leaving them wanting more because they're excited about like now it sucks for the guy behind you, right? If it's the COO that's presenting next, great, thanks. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a helpful thing that folks can do.
Yeah, and I think we should reiterate the point again that you've mentioned around marketing jargon, just within boardroom spaces, because I can imagine you've seen it and been guilty of it time and time again, just using jargon that people don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah, even, I mean, like internal names for products and stuff like that. Like you might want to tell them this product is doing better than this product. Like they may not even recognize the names of those products, and now they're completely lost.
Yeah.
So really putting your grandma goggles on is what I call them. But if my grandma can't listen to my message and generally understand, like she's a bright woman, she should be able to understand what I'm telling her and why it matters. If I'm losing her, I should probably rethink my approach. So yeah, I think the other thing is, or the other tendency of folks that aren't maybe experienced in this environment, they'll come in and they want to do such a good job. They want to get people excited. They want to motivate. They want to impress. And the result is they set expectations that they'll never live up to in the next meeting, right? We're going to sell, this much. So it's really important that in your first meeting, but then in every meeting, you do tell them what you're going to be doing over the next, in the next period. Let's say it's in the next quarter, and what they can expect. But in those cases, I would be very conservative. And you, again, want to review all of that with your CEO, your CFO ahead of time. Make sure that those plans are aligned. No surprises in the management team ever, and definitely no surprises for the CEO. That's a bad career move. But if you're the marketer, you want to be able to talk about the key decisions you plan to make, any major personnel moves. It doesn't matter if you're going to hire a new copywriter. Board doesn't care. So leave that alone. But any major things, you're expanding your team to Europe. That's something, or to America in this case. It's something that you might want to mention to your board. And then as you're setting expectations and what the key outcomes are for next quarter, that's an important thing to both make sure you present, because you will have one or more board members who go back to the previous quarter's deck and review that.
Interesting. Okay.
And then go to the new quarter's deck. And I have been called out on.
Yeah.
Now wait a minute. So Josh, last quarter you said on this page here, and if you don't know your own stuff, thankfully I was able to say, yeah, well, here, I won't call them out.
You navigated it.
But here's why we've made this shift and what we learned and so on. But anyway, you don't want to be caught flat-footed.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a definite good point. I suppose, does that round it out in terms of how to prepare, what to expect inside the boardroom?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. I would love to hear first-hand experience, some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen inside of the boardroom from CMOs, and maybe mistakes that you've made inside there as well that people can avoid.
Yeah. So we've touched on a couple of those already. The tendency to over explain, to over present. Um, that's for so like that's definitely number one. So many marketers who love what they do and are proud about what they've achieved, they go headlong into the details, and I mean you're trying to give them the no fly zone, and like you're kicking them under the table, and it's just, pull it back up. Really understanding your audience and the degree to which they're ready and able to receive the information that you're presenting to them is important. Um, Getting lost in vanity metrics.
Mm.
So talking about metrics that have, we grew X by 60% this quarter, but it has no business connection,
Yeah.
is a bad move. And again, you'll lose your audience, or you'll just, you won't demonstrate that you understand how the business works.
Do you think you lose a bit of credibility?
Yes,
With
that's exactly
amongst
what
those
I mean.
people?
As an executive,
Yeah.
not as a marketing
Yeah,
person,
for sure.
but like, oh, your marketing person's great. They don't need to come back to the next board meeting.
Yeah.
I've seen that multiple times, and and it's just something to be cautious of. Uh, I think there are times when executive teams don't prepare enough together. None of us
Mm.
like to role play,
Yeah.
but role playing for a team and having your entire executive team together and going through those operational slides, um, super important,
Mm.
super important. And having one member of the team uh, sitting out, who maybe isn't going to have an active board presentation role, but has some seniority and can listen for what board members are going to care about.
Yeah.
Um, or maybe it's one of those consultants or advisors that
Yeah.
they maybe bring in, having them in that session to shoot at you. It's way better to get shot at in
Yeah.
practice than it
Yeah.
is in the real game, right? So I think that's oftentimes we see some of that, and so it's good to plan for that. Um, I want to be sensitive here. We all want to be seen as doing a good job. Uh, in my very first board meeting, remember, I was at a company called Verimark, and I was very interested in self-preservation. I was much younger in my career, and I really wanted to make sure that the board felt like I was doing the right things,
Yeah.
and so my metrics or my presentation was far more me focused,
Mm.
and not business focused. Like, fight the temptation. These people, they're just people, but they want to know that that the business is doing well, that this asset that they own is uh, is in good hands. They're not walking into the room doubtful of you. So just kick that imposter syndrome out the door, and instead focus on how you can make their lives better by giving them information that they can use.
What if the business isn't doing well?
Well, that I've been in those situations. We all have. To me, investors don't want leaders that hide from that.
Yeah.
You have to confront that head on, like right in the face, and say, look, we know this isn't what we want. Here's what we've observed. Here's where we're having trouble. These are things that we either can change or things that we can't change about the market, the world, our competitors. Sometimes that does need board help. Sometimes there's a legal solution to certain challenges that are facing. Like, acknowledging the real problems, the major risk problems for any company is absolutely part of presenting to the board, and again, you can't do it just on the fly. Like, you've got to make sure you prep for that with your leadership team.
And I think you'd agree with this, but no matter what role you're in or what level you're at, I think that's something you should always take forward. Like, don't hide from
Absolutely.
the negative results. Like, set the the plan in place to combat those negative
It's
results.
one of our core values at Blend.
Exactly.
Okay? So yes, we want to hit challenges head on,
Yeah.
and sort them out face to face without trying to sweep anything under the rug.
Yeah, because you get found out as well
Yeah,
in the end.
yeah, it comes to roost. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's never a good idea to hide behind the negative results, because if you're just trying to impose positivity on a negative business situation, like the people at the top are seeing business metrics declining, and if you're just presenting positive impact, it's not aligning, and
Right.
you're going to get found out.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. What if you're not in the boardroom yet? And that might be people that are either aspiring to be in the boardroom or are just actually interested to know, how you might go about preparing for that, or what really happens.
How to even earn a spot, really.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, so when you're talking to your CMO, if you're reporting to the CMO, when you're working with if you don't have a CMO, but
Yeah.
the CRO is handling all of that, and you want to have access to that, first of all, ask, right? Like, you have to make your desires known. Not all of us can just assume that. Like, I know a lot of people that would never want to be in the boardroom. They run for the hills.
Yep.
I'm sick that day. So make your desires known, but then work for it. Be able to, like, everything we've talked about. If you're not the one presenting, the person you're talking to is the one that's going to have to do that job. Help them be successful.
Yeah.
Show them that you can you understand the world that they're walking into. You want them to be successful. And so you're willing to go and do some of the grunt work that might be necessary, digging through data, putting together stories, and framing them in ways that help them prepare, so that they have a reason to think that you might actually do a great job.
Yeah.
Coming along and having a seat.
Yeah. Be the sidekick, like the Robin Hood. That's gonna.
That's often where it starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Anything else for?
For that more junior, I don't want to say junior, but the marketing person, marketing team member who's not yet being invited to the board, I think the only other thing that I would really stress, and this is me as an ex-CRO, is really understand your CRO. Like, understand how they're driving the revenue strategy, and always think about the revenue strategy. Don't think about the marketing strategy as much, right? Think when you're not only when you're prepping for the board, but as you think about your job, think all the way through it. Don't think your job ends with creating pipeline or creating leads or creating conversions or whatever, or creating images, depending on what your job is, right? Think about how all of that connects to driving revenue, driving NRR, driving EBITDA, ARR growth, all of the things that investors care about and that your executive cares about. Because if you can't do that, and you're stuck really just like, all I can think about is my piece, without that broader view of the business, you're just not going to get to that spot.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think that probably, wraps this up. I was just looking at the time there and thought, yeah, we're probably like almost been going an hour now, which is kind of like
Wow.
flown by, right?
That has flown by.
Is there anything you kind of want to like wrap up with, leave some like rapid tips or takeaways for people from this
Well,
episode?
I mean, I don't have anything new probably, but I'll give you three summary points. Know your audience, walk in their shoes, speak in business outcomes, not tactics, and rehearse your message, or rehearse until your message is super clear. 2 slides. There you have it. Remember, the outcomes that you're trying to drive are real demonstrated command of your market, of your individual business in that market, and of the metrics that drive that business. And if you can do those 3 things, you can set the right expectation, the right impression with that board the first time you get in there. And then from there, then you can start to pull them into more substantive conversations and plans and strategies and so on.
Love that. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. I am just so excited to do more of this stuff,
Me
like
too.
these kind of topics on the podcast, because even though some marketers might hear topics like this and think, oh, well, that's not about conversion rate optimization, or that's not about how do I get more leads from LinkedIn. And we will still cover those things on this
Right.
podcast for sure, because our audience isn't all CMOs. Actually, the minority is CMOs, and a lot of the people that we speak to from this podcast are, not CMOs and do still want that tactical thinking. But I think as a marketer, if you can understand what happens in the boardroom, what happens in the C-suite, what happens when they're talking about financial metrics and exits in the business, and like all of these kind of things that like truly matter to the bottom line, you can just level up your marketing, tenfold, and really become an even bigger asset to the business. And like I am super excited to learn more from you, and do more of these podcasts and listen back to them,
And vice versa.
like this is going to be awesome. And I hope that everybody listening to this podcast enjoys diving into some more of this stuff alongside our usual more tactical things as well, because I think it's kind of just really helping marketers to become the best they can be in their role. So awesome, really looking forward to what we do next. I think our next episode on Demand Decoded will also be us again, so stay tuned for that. And apart from that, we will catch you next time. It's been amazing. Thank you everyone, and see you next time.